We've all been there, standing in a showroom, staring at a brand new bike that looks perfect, convinced newer has to mean better. But what most riders don't realize is that some of the smartest buyers today are walking past those machines and going straight for bikes built 20 to 25 years ago. Because if you don't understand what changed, you're not just overpaying, you're buying into a system that quietly costs more, controls more, and gives you less ownership than you think. Something unusual is happening in the motorcycle world, and experienced riders are starting to notice it. The machines are faster, cleaner, more advanced than ever before. On paper, they've never been better, yet the feeling doesn't always stay with you. You ride, you respect it, then you walk away unchanged. There's a layer now, something between input and response. Subtle, but present. It makes you question when riding became something guided instead of something direct. And once that thought settles in, it leads somewhere unexpected. Because this shift isn't really about progress, it's about what quietly changed underneath it. Now when you move into your subscription motorcycle idea, it doesn't feel like a new topic, it sounds like exaggeration, until you look past the purchase and focus on what ownership has become. Because today's motorcycles are no longer just machines, they're layered systems. Sensors, ride-by-wire throttles, traction control strategies, engine maps you never fully touch. And when something goes wrong, the answer often isn't a wrench, it's a connection. Now, none of that is failure. In many cases, it's brilliance. These systems prevent mistakes, smooth power, and quietly protect the rider in ways older machines never could. But there's a cost that doesn't show up on any spec sheet. Dependence. You're no longer maintaining something you fully understand. You're interacting with something that decides alongside you. Adjustments that once lived in your hands now sit behind software. Problems that once revealed themselves now hide until a tool translates them. That changes the relationship. And if you've ever walked away from a brand new bike thinking, this feels like more system than machine, you're probably already seeing where this is going. Stick around, hit that like button, drop a hype, and subscribe. Because that mindset right there is exactly what keeps this channel grounded in real-world riding. Not trends, not marketing, just what actually holds up when the miles start stacking. Modern bikes are, without question, more advanced. More power, more control, more safety systems layered into every ride. But at least it forces a question. Most riders don't stop to ask, when did motorcycles stop being machines you fully understand and start becoming systems you manage? And as you follow that question back, it leads directly to the next chapter. Because there was a period when that balance hadn't been lost yet, when performance, simplicity, and responsibility still lived in the same machine. If you trace that question back far enough, you land in a very specific window, late 1990s into the late 2000s. Not crude, not over-engineered, just right. This was when performance had already arrived and reliability was no longer a gamble. Fuel injection began to appear, but it didn't dominate. Electronics existed, yet they stayed in the background. Engineers weren't trying to manage the ride, they were sharpening it. And you feel that immediately. Throttle becomes a direct conversation. Brakes answer without hesitation. The chassis speaks through the road, not through a screen. If something shifts mid-corner, you know it instantly. Control isn't shared, but what defined that era wasn't simplicity alone, it was balance. Power you could actually use, weight that made sense, components you could adjust with your own hands. Nothing was hidden. You didn't need software to understand the machine. You needed time. And the more time you gave it, the clearer everything became. These motorcycles didn't protect you from mistakes. They trusted you not to make them. And once you experience that kind of clarity, it changes what refined really means. Because the next step isn't theory anymore, it's proof. Before stepping into that, when you think back to that late 90s to mid-2000s era, what bike stood out to you as something special? Was it the feel, the sound, the simplicity? Drop it in the comments, because that perspective matters, and chances are, someone watching right now is considering that exact same machine. Now let's stop talking and start proving it. We're putting 10 legendary motorcycles head-to-head with their modern replacements. Same purpose, very different machines. We'll look at price, real-world performance, and how they actually feel to ride. And as we go, a pattern starts to emerge. More tech doesn't mean a better bike. And out of those 10 legendary machines, each one going head-to-head with a modern tech trap, there's no better place to start than the bike that defined reliability, precision, and rider connection for an entire generation. Let's start with the Fireblade. This is where numbers stop impressing and start revealing. Put a well-kept Honda CBR 954RR Fireblade next to a brand new Honda CBR 1000RR Fireblade, and the gap looks obvious at first glance. One is accessible, the other demands commitment before the engine even turns over. The older Fireblade lives in a range most riders can reach without hesitation. The modern one pushes into territory that forces a decision, ownership, or obligation. That difference matters more than most admit. Then come the specifications, where the newer machine tries to dominate the conversation. Yes, it produces extraordinary horsepower. Yes, it carries layers of electronic assistance designed to correct, stabilize, and refine every input. On paper, it is overwhelming, but here is what those numbers hide. That performance is not fully yours. It is filtered, moderated, and sometimes restricted before it reaches the pavement. You are not commanding the machine directly, you are negotiating with it. The older Fireblade tells a different story. Its power feels immediate, its weight feels manageable. There are no permissions required, no systems deciding how much of your intent is acceptable. Every movement translates without delay. It is not just performance, it is clarity. Comfort follows that same divide. The earlier bike settles into real roads with a natural balance, less heat, a more forgiving position, and a sense of stability that does not change mid-ride. The modern version feels sharper, but also more demanding, stiff, focused, and tiring outside controlled conditions. And over time, the contrast deepens. The newer machine brings complexity that ages. Sensors, control units, and software all move toward obsolescence. Maintenance becomes expensive, sometimes dependent. The older one remains approachable, serviceable, understandable. And that leads to a conclusion many riders arrive at quietly. The machine that gives you less on paper often gives you more where it counts. And once you see that shift, it's hard to ignore. Because it doesn't just happen once, it happens again. We will take a look at Yamaha's middleweight lineup. What used to be a high-revving, razor-sharp supersport has now been replaced by something very different. Next, let's compare the Yamaha YZF-R6 to the Yamaha YZF-R7. This is where the rules didn't evolve, they were quietly rewritten. On one side sits the Yamaha YZF-R6, a machine that defined what a middleweight sport bike could be. High-revving, razor-sharp, built with a single purpose in mind. It didn't ask for compromise. It expected commitment. On the other side stands the Yamaha YZF-R7. Similar stance, similar intent on the surface, but underneath, a completely different direction. Start with what riders actually feel in their wallet. A clean R6 today lands somewhere between $6,000 and $9,000, depending on condition and year. The R7 arrives new, closer to $10,000. So the newer machine doesn't lower the barrier, it shifts it. Then comes the real difference. The R6 delivers around 117 horsepower from an inline-4 that climbs past 15,000 RPM. It's urgent, demanding. Every input matters. The R7 answers with roughly 74 horsepower from a parallel twin, broader torque, lower ceiling, easier to approach. That sounds like refinement until you ride both. Because the R6 wasn't built to simplify the experience, it was built to sharpen it. The R7, by contrast, smooths the edges, removes the pressure, and makes everything more accessible. And that's the shift, not progression, repositioning. Even the ride reflects it. The R7 feels composed, predictable, controlled. The R6 feels alive, reactive, impossible to ignore. One rewards precision, the other reduces consequence. And once you notice that difference, you start to see it everywhere. The next comparison pushes this even further, into a space where balance itself starts to disappear. At this point, we've looked at raw performance, real-world usability, and how modern bikes have shifted the riding experience. So tell me this, what matters more to you? Right now, control, simplicity, or outright performance? Drop it in the comments, and while you're there, like the video and subscribe if this kind of breakdown actually helps you cut through the noise. Now, returning to the comparison, the next machine pushes this even further into a space where balance itself starts to disappear. Take the Suzuki GSXR 750 and compare it to the Suzuki GSXR 1000. This is the point where progress stops feeling like improvement and starts feeling like excess. The Suzuki GSXR 750 sits right at that edge, not chasing dominance, not built to overwhelm, just balanced in a way most machines never quite manage. Power that responds, weight that disappears once the road opens up, a motorcycle that feels complete the moment you ride it. Then came the Suzuki GSXR 1000. More engine, more output, more everything. On paper, it looks like the natural evolution. But evolution toward what? The 1000 delivers staggering power. Numbers that sound impressive until you realize how little of it you actually touch. Layers of electronics step in, smoothing, correcting, translating. Not because they add excitement, but because they are required to contain it, and that changes the relationship. The 750 speaks directly. What you ask is what you get, immediate, predictable, honest. The kind of machine that builds confidence instead of managing risk. The 1000, by contrast, feels like it's thinking alongside you, always adjusting, always interpreting, always one layer removed. For some riders, that feels advanced. For others, it feels distant. Because when a motorcycle needs constant mediation to make sense on real roads, something fundamental has already shifted. The experience becomes less about connection and more about control systems doing their job quietly in the background. And here's where it becomes impossible to ignore. The 750 doesn't demand adaptation. It meets you where you are. Day rides, back roads, long hours in the saddle. It works with the rider, not against them. The 1000 asks more. Sharper posture, greater restraint, a constant awareness of what lies beneath your right hand. Not just power, but consequence. So the question isn't which one is faster, it's which one you actually want to keep riding. Because somewhere along the way, more stopped meaning better and started meaning unnecessary. And at this point, it's easy to think this shift only affects performance bikes, high-revving engines, track-focused machines. But that's not the case, because the same pattern shows up even in bikes that were never about outright speed, but about balance and character. Take the Honda VFR 800 and compare it to the Honda VFR 800F. The Honda VFR 800 was built with depth, not for headlines, not for trends, but for riders who plan to keep it. Gear-driven cams, a V4 that felt alive, and a connection so clear it never needed explanation. Then came the Honda VFR 800F, refined, updated, smoothed out in all the right places on paper. But something shifted. The original delivers power like a conversation, direct, predictable, always there when you ask. The newer machine introduces systems, layers, timing, deciding when the engine reveals itself. Not broken, just filtered. Over time, that difference grows. One feels like a partner, the other, a process. And that's where refinement crosses a line. Because when a motorcycle becomes too polished, it stops speaking clearly. It starts translating. And while Honda was slowly filtering out that mechanical edge, another manufacturer pushed performance to a level where riders couldn't rely on feel alone anymore. Not because riders needed help, but because the machines were being pushed beyond natural control. And instead of stepping back, the industry stepped in with systems, which is exactly where the next step forward takes us, where we take the Yamaha ZX6R and compare it with the modern Yamaha ZX6R, and where the trap first becomes visible. The Yamaha ZX6R came from a time when performance meant responsibility, no filters, no safety nets, just a direct line between your hand and what the machine delivered, fast, demanding, and completely honest. Then there's the Yamaha ZX6R Modern, more power, more precision, and far more happening beneath the surface. Sensors, algorithms, constant adjustments, working to keep everything in line. Because without them, it would be too much. That's the shift. The older bike asks you to rise to it. The newer one works to contain itself. One builds skill through consequence. The other smooths everything into something safer, but more distant. Not worse, just different. But when every input gets interpreted before it reaches the road, something changes in how it feels. Because at some point, control replaces connection. Now you can probably feel the split, performance on one side, connection on the other. Most riders lean one way without even realizing it. I'd be curious where you land on that, because that answer usually points straight to the kind of bike you end up trusting long-term. And as that same pressure started showing up in smaller displacement machines, manufacturers had to make a decision: follow the same path or rethink the approach entirely. And when compared to the raw, rider-dependent nature of earlier supersports, that decision changes the category in a fundamental way. This is where we move to the next step forward, where we take the Kawasaki ZX6R and compare it with the modern Kawasaki ZX6R. This is where control changed its meaning. On one side sits the Kawasaki ZX6R, a machine from that earlier era that didn't correct you, didn't step in, didn't soften anything. It expected precision, and it gave clarity in return. On the other side stands the modern Kawasaki Ninja ZX6R. Similar power, similar purpose, but surrounded by layers designed to assist, interpret, and occasionally override. At first glance, that sounds like progress, but ride them back to back, and the difference isn't speed, it's authority. The older bike answers directly. Every throttle input, every braking decision, every small mistake belongs entirely to you. There's no translation happening underneath. The newer machine still performs, but it negotiates. Traction systems, ride modes, electronic safeguards, all working quietly in the background, shaping the outcome. Not replacing the rider, but no longer leaving them alone either. With the modern ZX6R, performance becomes easier to access, but less dependent on the rider alone. And that shift might make sense in a high-performance category, but it creates tension somewhere else. Because not every bike was built around chasing limits. Some bikes were built around doing just enough, and doing it well. So when that same push toward electronics reaches those machines, it doesn't enhance the formula, it risks complicating it. That's where the next comparison comes in. Looking at the Suzuki SV650 alongside the modern Suzuki SV650. There's a point where motorcycles stop feeling like machines and start behaving like systems. The Suzuki SV650 sits right on that edge. The 2003 version was never built to impress. It was built to respond. A light V-twin, immediate throttle, and a chassis that talked back. No filters, no delay, just input and reaction. Today you'll find one between $2,500 and $4,500. A new SV650 around $8,000, nearly double. But the real difference isn't price, it's intent. The older bike delivers about 70 horsepower in a way that feels direct and usable. You twist, it moves. Simple. The modern version adds smoother fueling, ABS, and refinement. Slightly more power, but less urgency. Because the original didn't hide mistakes. It forced you to learn throttle control, balance, timing. The new one softens that edge. Both are comfortable, practical, easy to own. But one feels alive, the other feels controlled. And over time, that difference matters. Because simplicity builds skill, complexity builds dependence. The original SV650 wasn't perfect, it was honest. And that's exactly why riders keep going back. But this shift doesn't end here, because while Suzuki kept things restrained, other manufacturers looked at the same category and saw an opportunity to evolve it into something sharper, more premium, and more aligned with modern expectations. Not better in function, but different in intent. And when you place that approach next to something as straightforward as the SV, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. This is where we step into the next machine, where we take the Honda CBR 600F4i and compare it with the Honda CBR 650R. Because again, there was a time when motorcycles weren't softened to fit expectations, they were built to set them. The Honda CBR 600F4i came from that time. It didn't chase attention. It delivered balance, real speed, real control, and reliability riders could depend on without second guessing. A high revving inline four pushing around 110 horsepower, smooth through the range, eager near redline, and always ready when asked. Today you'll find one between $3,000 and $5,500. The modern CBR 650R, closer to $10,000. Again, almost double. But what are you actually gaining? The newer bike makes less power, carries more weight, and is tuned for mid-range comfort. It's designed to be approachable, predictable, easy, and that's where the shift becomes clear. The F4 I was built to perform. The 650R is built to accommodate. Even the feel gives it away. The older bike feels alive, like it wants to be pushed further. The newer one feels measured, like it's holding something back. Electronics smooth the edges, assist quietly, intervene subtly, not enough to notice immediately, but enough to change the experience. Because modern bikes don't fully trust the rider anymore. They guide you whether you ask for it or not, and over time, that guidance becomes a filter. The F4, I stayed simple, proven, mechanical in a way that builds confidence year after year. The newer machine adds layers, systems, sensors, complexity waiting in the background. And here's what gets lost in that transition. When you design for everyone, you slowly move away from excellence. The F4, I never tried to please everyone, it just got it right. And that's why riders who understand the difference keep going. But this idea of refinement doesn't stop here, because not every manufacturer stayed in that middle ground. Some went all in, turning performance bikes into something more expressive, more intense, and far more dependent on electronic systems to hold it all together. And when compared to the controlled evolution we just saw, that shift feels deliberate. This is where we head in the next direction, comparing the Yamaha FZ1 with the Yamaha MT10. The Yamaha FZ1 never needed attention to prove anything. It carried quiet confidence, an engine rooted in the early R1, tuned for the real world, around 140 to 150 horsepower, delivered smoothly, predictably, and entirely under your command. Today, you'll find one between $4,000 and $7,000. The Yamaha MT10, closer to $14,000. More than double. But again, the real difference isn't cost, it's control. The FZ1 gives you everything it has. No filters, no negotiation. You twist the throttle and the bike answers, fully, immediately, without hesitation. The MT10, around 160 horsepower, but managed. Traction control, slide control, lift control, ride modes, quick shifter, layer after layer deciding how much of that power actually reaches you. It feels fast, but it doesn't always feel direct, because every input is interpreted. The older bike never asked permission, it trusted you to handle it. Comfort tells the same story. The FZ1 was built to do everything, upright, stable, effortless over distance. A machine you could ride all day without thinking twice. The MT10, tighter, hotter, more intense. Exciting in short bursts, but tiring when the miles add up. And then comes ownership. The FZ1 is mechanical, proven, and easy to live with long-term. No hidden systems waiting to age. The MT10 is advanced but dependent. Sensors, software, complexity that grows over time. Because here's the truth. More technology doesn't just add capability, it adds distance. The FZ1 didn't chase trends, it delivered trust. And if you've been following along this far, you already get what this channel is trying to do. Just honest conversations about what actually holds up over time. And if that's something you want more of, click that like button. And if you want to support us even more, consider becoming a member. You'll get early access to new videos, and it helps us keep making content that actually respects how riders think, not how companies sell. The MT10 doesn't just use electronics, it's built around them. The entire experience is shaped, adjusted, and delivered through systems. And that raises a different kind of question, because what happens when a manufacturer known for raw, mechanical feel tries to modernize without losing that identity? That's where things get interesting, because the challenge isn't adding technology, it's deciding how much of the original character survives once you do. This is where we go next, where we take the Kawasaki Z1000 and compare it with the Kawasaki Z900. Because this is where the illusion finally becomes visible. On one side stands the Kawasaki Z1000, a machine shaped by force and feel, not by presentation. It delivers power in a way that's immediate, heavy, and unmistakably real. On the other side is the Kawasaki Z900. Sharper lines, updated systems, broader appeal. At first glance, it looks like a clear step forward. Then you ride them, because the numbers don't tell the story. Both sit in nearly the same range of output, both capable, both fast enough for any real road. But the experience separates them instantly. The Z1000 gives you everything at once. No delay, no interpretation. The throttle feels connected, the chassis speaks in plain terms, and every mile asks something from you. The Z900 responds differently, smoother, more measured, carefully delivered. It still performs, but it chooses how that performance reaches you. And that's the illusion. Modern motorcycles didn't just improve, they quietly move control away from the rider. And at the end of the day, this isn't about old versus new. It's about what you actually value when you ride. Because the smartest riders aren't chasing specs, they're choosing machines that make sense long after the excitement wears off. Want to go deeper into bikes like these? Click the video on your screen right now. It breaks down exactly what most riders still get wrong. And if you haven't already, subscribe to stay ahead of it.